So you've got a horse that's reactive. Maybe they're spooky, maybe they show a lot of anxiety, but that can make you feel frustrated. It can make you feel upset because you really care about them. It can even make you feel nervous too. And I'm here to tell you that that's actually how horses are designed. They're supposed to be reactive. They're supposed to be spooky. And this is all going to make sense when I explain a little bit about their nervous system and how we work with their behavior to reduce that reactivity, keep you safe, and give them a better life. You've also probably worked out that your horse isn't being difficult. They're just overwhelmed, and you're not failing. You're just missing the information that nobody taught you about reactivity. And I'm going to walk you through the whole process so that you can understand why it happens and what to do about it. So why is your horse spooky? Why are they reacting? Because millions of years of evolution have favored a horse that spooks, that reacts quickly and runs away. Fastest to react, first to get away. You don't want to have a horse and didn't favor looking at a rustling bush and going, oh look, mountain lion, not, shall I run, shall I? No, react, go, turn around when you get 100 yards away and have a look whether you need to keep running. That's part of evolution of horses. They brought that with them. They are still doing that now because they're born with that reaction. We train it out of them. And that leads to their nervous system. So their nervous system is designed to be on alert, to survive, to look out for threats, to predict behavior. They have a prefrontal cortex like we do. It's smaller, it's involved with planning and learning and being able to structure responses. But the larger part, just like our mammalian brain, is about reaction, about flight, fight, freeze, survival. And so what we see is that the horse's brain is predisposed to switching from the prefrontal cortex, the learning bit, to survival mode. When does it do this? It does it when the brain is really stressed. So when we look at things like how our equines live, that will affect how they are going to be stressed, not stressed, calm, relaxed. Think about yourself going on holiday. You've been lying on the beach for a week, you've done some water sports, you've had some nice food, conversation, lovely weather, whatever your sporting choice is, whatever your holiday choice is, you're just enjoying it. And then something happens down the beach, you kind of react, you have a look, oh yeah, and then you go back to relaxing. But imagine a week later, you've been back at work and uh, you've had to commute, you've had some deadlines to meet, the boss has given you some challenging new things to do, the kids are getting back into routine at school, whatever it might be. Your thresholds of stress are building, and you are more likely to react in that situation to something small, similar to the beach, because you're already more aroused. And that's what happens with our equines. So they begin to pick up from their environment cues. Now, it can be about individuals, their individual learning style and character, their previous experiences, how they were trained as a foal or not. But it really relies around this environment. So the environment they're in is creating lots and lots of opportunities for them to be calm and relaxed or to be stressed. And so this is about companionship. It's about whether they've got good social interaction or poor social interaction that creates stress. Whether they've got forage, freedom to move, those sorts of things creates relaxation or create stress. Do they get enough sleep? Do they get confinement? How are they being handled so that their handling and interaction with human beings is calm and relaxed? And this all builds up to start pressing on their thresholds. So we all have thresholds at which we're going to erupt. Our brains, bodies produce chemicals which prepare us for fight or flight. So when you're back at work, you're stressed, you've got all of the chemicals in there that are building and raising and approaching your thresholds. You go to work, you have a difficult maybe commute, bit of a longer drive, get stuck in some traffic, the boss complains because you're a bit late. You got some difficult projects you can't get over, just something bad happens, this doesn't work, your children ring up because they've got a problem at school, you've got to leave early, you get stuck in traffic, you give it the time you get home, you are completely at your limit. And your partner says, hey, did you manage to get so-and-so today? no, I didn't get my. Why do they? You just snap. You snap at that one thing, but you didn't snap at that one thing. You got trigger stacked. Everything else built up, and that one thing is the typical straw that broke the camel's back. But that's what's happening to our horses. That reactivity comes out of this constant process of stretching their comfort zones, of adding to their stress levels and approaching a point where they can't cope anymore. And they escalate it, they react to stay alive. So that small thing that shouldn't produce a reaction if you're just lying on the beach, your partner says, oh, do you remember to do this? You go, no, I didn't actually. It's fine. But they say the same thing when you're stressed and you can react, become very upset. And that's the survival brain. Your horse that's being very spooky, is very reactive, is using their survival brain more than we would want them to. That's all. How does it feel for the horse? Unpredictability, apprehension, anticipation of something maybe negative. All of these things begin to add to that trigger stacking because there are cues in their environment. You approaching them, the head collar, tack, a particular road, location, the arena, all of those things can be part of the trigger stacking process. And so what you start to see is that horse's anxiety builds. Now, you may not notice that if they're already at a high level of anxiety and anticipation through their environmental stress, or it may be more obvious if they're in a calm, relaxed environment and you start going for a ride and you can feel it build. Horses seldom react to the first thing. It does happen. That's the innate flight mechanism in them. But generally, it builds over time until we get this trigger stacking and this overload of chemicals, the noradrenalines and the cortisols that cause the animal to react to survive, shut down their prefrontal cortex and rely on their survival mechanism. And that can be really uncomfortable for any horse or person. Now, depending on who you are, will depend on how you react to it. So if you're a nervous rider, if you're lacking a bit of confidence, which is absolutely fine, what you can end up doing is buying into their apprehension, their anticipation, their reactivity, because you are able to predict their behavior. They might react, they might do something unpredictable, and that causes you to feel nervous. And so what happens is, if you're riding, you start to get a little tense, and they kind of feel that tension, and they go, what are you doing? What are you looking at? And then you feel a little bit more tense because now they're looking a bit more tense and feeling more tense. And as you feel more tense, they feel more tense and they're starting to look around. And then you begin to feel more tense. And what can't you see? And they don't realize that they are the cause of your tension. So at some point, that might bubble over. We go past the edge of their comfort zones and they react, leap out, do whatever, turn and spook. They're going to save us. So the worst case scenario is we buy into that. So that's when we start to talk about grounding, being calm. And I want to say that all of this work that you need to do is often about not doing the work when you're at that threshold. It's about backing off, coming back, doing the training, preparing them mentally and those things. We'll look at that in a moment. So, you need to breathe. You need to find your calmness. And you can find calmness by going, I don't have to push them past their threshold. I don't have to ride them past. I don't have to make them do it. If you are going to be out there doing it and you're riding and you get reactivity, you need to notice it. You need to be bringing in your curiosity. So the three things that I would always encourage are that calmness. Can we create a situation in which I can be calm? If I can be calm, the horse can be calm. That might be a ritual. It might be grounding. Then you need clarity. How am I going to communicate with them? How am I going to give them, shape their behavior? How am I going to set the environment up so they can learn the things that I need them to learn? And then you need to get curious. You need to get curious about, if you're riding, if you're out, where are the points where they're starting to escalate? Where do you feel that little tension in their body? Get curious about what makes them just start to react, and how quickly or slowly does it take for that to come out of their body. Get curious about cues, the signals, the things that they start to react to, because that begins to give you information that begins to be able to avoid those situations or to de-escalate them. It might be about slowing down. It might be about setting up a different environment to work in. And I get it. It's not easy to do, but this is where the work of practice, of clarity, of calmness, of curiosity gives you a base to work on yourself before you try and fix the horse. And it can really help if you stop trying to do things to them, control them, rein them in. What we want to do is develop a shaping plan. A lot of this getting over reactivity is about training the brain to not be so anxious, to be able to relax. And so having a shaping plan that doesn't put you in a situation where they have to react and it becomes dangerous, or you have to do things, what might make them react is a key point for you being able to be calm, to be able to be curious, to be able to be clear in what you're doing. So having a plan and knowing where you're going can help you as a handler not buy into their reactivity and nervousness. So what do you do? Okay, the first absolute rule is you have to stay safe. Like golden rule for everything, you've got to stay safe because you've got to be there tomorrow to look after them and to be able to continue their training. So if it happens and they start to react, do whatever you feel you have to do to stay safe. Ideally, what we want to do is recognize they're starting to trigger stack. They're starting to load their system with these anxiety chemicals that they're going to make them predictably react to something that'll be tiny that comes out the hedge. Can you spot those increases? And this is often if you were riding or going out, what happens is they see something small and they have a little, oh, and you go, okay, that's fine, nothing. And we think that passes instantly, but the chemicals are now in their system. It takes up to 15 minutes for them to dissipate. And then they see, I don't know, a bag blowing around, and that happens again. And it's a little bit of, okay, but it's still there. You think, there's nothing of it. It's just a bag, don't be silly. And you go on a bit further, and there's a kid on a bike, and they react a little bit, but nothing much. And then a bit further, 5 minutes later, there's something else. And eventually, when the bird blows out of the hedge, and that's when they start to react, turn, spin, and why have you just reacted to that? You didn't. They reacted to everything that went before. So trying to see those elements so that you can diffuse the situation, you can slow them down, you can get them further away from the criteria. So if you're training, you actually increase the distance between the scary thing and them. If you need to, get off and walk. Absolutely get off, walk past something, find a place to get on. Maybe walk home if you have to. I don't care. Stay safe. Don't escalate it. Begin to think about how you can diffuse and give them time to clear those chemicals out of the system. Some things you should watch out for and try and avoid. And those are things like trying to make them do things, trying to escalate the force that we use to get them past an obstacle, to tie them in, to use a bigger bit or a noseband, or to use more force or a whip. Anything that creates pain, discomfort is only going to increase their anxiety and push them closer to their threshold. So trying to avoid those is really important. For that reactive horse, whatever you might think, just repeatedly being exposed to scary things and being forced past them isn't really going to make it better for them. Then we want to avoid things like trying to teach them a lesson that they're not ready for. So have we done the shaping that sets them up to be able to succeed? Are we making the steps small enough? Nothing worse than trying to do steps that are too big in training. That will overexpose your youngster, cause them to become reactive. So reducing the size of the steps, knowing what to ask for at the right time are crucial. And a shaping plan is a good way of making sure you don't make too big a steps and that you're putting in the small steps. You also want to avoid taking it personally. Their behavior isn't a personal comment on you. It is just how they're feeling. It's an expression. It's communication. It's telling you the state of mind that they're in, and it's really useful, but it's not a moral judgment on you. That doesn't mean to say we can't get better and we don't have responsibility for it. We just don't need to blame ourselves and be like, oh, it's terrible, I'm a rubbish person, because got a reactive horse. Staying calm, staying curious, giving clarity is really important, and that's not helped by blaming ourselves and being uncomfortable. So we watch the labeling and what language we use. If we're going to call our horse spooky, naughty, difficult, stubborn, any of those negative things, even if we don't really mean it, what happens, they stick in our brain and we begin to repeat them. And then the label of the horse means that we can't fix it because that's just who he is. He's naughty, he's stubborn, he's spooky, he's reactive, as opposed to he reacts in some situations. He's nervous in these things. He can spook if. And that then allows you to look for the reasons. Once you label the animal as those things, you stop looking for a cause and you feel that you can't change it. So what's the language that we use to avoid it becoming ingrained and us giving up because that's just who they are? So for me, if you've got a stressed reactive horse, the key is taking it back. So I'm not going to ride for a couple of months. I'm not going to go to the show. I'm going to bring all this back and I'm going to work on making them more resilient, on allowing them to learn, on building trust, on communication. And I know that sounds really twee and it's really boring because you want to get out there and ride and you want to do stuff. But this is lifetime work. This is about enjoying that, giving them a better life because they don't have to react, giving you a better life because you're not worried they're going to react. I think it's so easy for people to go, yeah, but I just want to get. You can't just get on. You need to do the right training. The more you practice for success, the more successful you will become. So you have to step back and go, I've got a reactive horse, trying to force them past it, trying to do it, it's just going to kill somebody. So don't do it. Go, right, let's come back. Going to get a shaping plan. Probably the one for trust, confidence, and problem solving is the one I recommend most. We're maybe going to do like my Thinkific course on your nervous or anxious horse and how to overcome that. But do the training. I'm not advertising you've got to do mine. What I'm saying is you've got to get a mindset. I've got to learn. I've got to go back. I've got to expose that animal in small steps. I've got to teach them how to make decisions, how to problem solve, how to trust each other. So you can predict their behavior, they can predict yours, and do that work. Build it up slowly. If you need a shaping plan for reintroducing riding so that you can build that up slowly because that's part of where they get most reactive, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. Enjoying that journey. You can't go to the problem to solve the problem. If you've got a reactive horse, you're not going to solve that out on the ride. You can survive it out on the ride. You can maybe reduce it out on the ride, but you cannot solve it. So you need to come back because you're not working with their body that's reacting. You're working with their brain that's causing them to react. And so for me, it's about stepping back. If you've got a reactive horse, don't put them in situations where they've got to be reactive. Begin to look at how you can alter their brain chemistry, how you can reduce their exposure to the chemicals that are going to overrun their body and cause them to be more reactive. And that will bring you success. Remember, your horse isn't learning because they don't want to, it's because they can't. When a horse is stressed, they're overwhelmed, they are anxious, fearful, and reactive, they are using their survival brain. The ability to think clearly through that for any mammal, including us and horses, is really difficult. That's a skill that we have to learn by teaching how to be calm in so many situations that the threshold is low enough that when those chemicals get dumped in because the bird flies out in front of us, it doesn't push them past their threshold. If you want more help with this particular subject, visit my website, hartshorsemanship.com, and there's a whole section on this. You can go to my Thinkific site for Ben Hart, and you will see there's a course there. There are free resources. If you're visiting the website, as I say, the shaping plan for trust, problem solving, and confidence is the one you should have a look at probably first, as that's my foundation to be able to get horses to have this resilience, for owners to learn to trust and communicate with each other. And if you go to the website, the shaping plan I recommend you look for is the one for trust, problem solving, and confidence. That's my foundation for most behavior issues, because we haven't taught our horses how to be more resilient. We haven't taught them how to solve problems. We haven't worked out, therefore, working with them in the right way. What will happen is they learn to trust us, we learn to predict and trust their behavior, and reactivity begins to reduce. So stay safe, step back, stay calm, get some clarity, get curious before you begin to move forward.